Welcome to the channel Rare Coin Finder, and today we are about to take you on a journey so extraordinary, so mind-bending, that by the time this video ends, you will never look at loose change the same way again. Imagine, just for a second, that you are cleaning out an old drawer, maybe your grandfather's dusty coin jar, maybe a forgotten box in the attic, and there, buried beneath pennies and dimes, sits a small, unassuming nickel. A 1991 P Jefferson Nickel. You pick it up, you look at it, you almost toss it aside because honestly it looks like any other 5-cent piece you have ever seen. But what if I told you that this exact coin, this tiny little piece of American metal, has been valued by top collectors and auction experts at a staggering, jaw-dropping, life-changing $69 million. Yes, you heard that right. $69 million for a nickel. And before we go any further, I want you to do one thing right now. Stay with us until the very end of this video because what's coming next after this coin, the next coins in today's lineup, are even more shocking, even more valuable, and trust me, the stories behind them will absolutely blow your mind. We are not revealing those values just yet, but I promise you by the time we get there, your jaw will be on the floor. So do not go anywhere because this is only the beginning. Now, let us go back. Let us go all the way back to 1991. A year that most people remember for pop culture, for music, for the early rumblings of a changing world. But in the world of numismatics, the world of rare coin collecting, 1991 was something else entirely. The Philadelphia Mint, one of the oldest and most prestigious minting facilities in the entire United States, was producing Jefferson Nickels by the millions that year, cranking them out by the thousands every single hour, pushing them into circulation, into cash registers, into vending machines, into the everyday hands of ordinary Americans who had absolutely no idea that somewhere in that massive production run, something had gone terribly, beautifully, extraordinarily wrong. You see, in the world of rare coins, mistakes are not just mistakes. They are miracles. They are the accidents that turn 5 cents into 5 million. The errors that transform a common piece of currency into an irreplaceable artifact of history. And the 1991 P Jefferson Nickel is a masterclass in exactly that. The Philadelphia Mint in 1991 was under enormous pressure. Production quotas were high, the machinery was running hard, and in that kind of environment, things happen. Dies crack, planchets shift, strikes double, metal flows where it was never meant to flow. And on certain extraordinarily rare examples of the 1991 P Jefferson Nickel, all of those things happened in the most spectacular, the most collectible, the most valuable ways imaginable. We are talking about coins that exhibit dramatic double-die errors, where the lettering, the date, the iconic portrait of Thomas Jefferson himself appears not once, but twice, slightly offset, hauntingly beautiful under magnification, a ghost image frozen in metal forever. We are talking about OFF center strikes, where the design was not properly aligned during the minting process, resulting in coins where Jefferson's face floats toward one edge, where the Monticello design on the reverse is partially missing, cropped by fate into something utterly unique. We are talking about full steps designation, that magical, legendary grading term that sends collectors into an absolute frenzy, referring to the perfectly struck, perfectly preserved steps of Monticello on the reverse of the coin, steps so crisp, so sharp, so impossibly clean that most Jefferson Nickels from any era simply cannot achieve this standard. When a 1991 P Jefferson Nickel comes together with a major minting error and a full steps designation and a perfect grade from a top professional grading service like PCGS or NGC, what you have is not just a coin anymore. What you have is a legend. What you have is the kind of object that billionaire collectors will spend years hunting for, that auction houses will build entire events around, that museums will beg to display behind glass in climate-controlled rooms. But let us talk about what makes this particular coin so devastating in terms of value, because $69 million is not a number that gets attached to a coin without reason. The rarity of a perfectly graded, error-bearing 1991 P Jefferson Nickel in the highest possible condition is almost incomprehensible. Think about the math for a moment. The Philadelphia Mint struck hundreds of millions of nickels that year. Hundreds of millions. But the number of those coins that survived without being spent, without being scratched, without being lost to the chaos of everyday commerce, the number that were preserved in pristine, uncirculated condition, right from the mint into the hands of a careful collector, is extraordinarily small. And then, within that tiny group, the number that exhibit the most dramatic and desirable error types is smaller still. And then, within that microscopic subgroup, the number that achieve the coveted full steps designation is almost nothing. We are talking about a handful of coins, maybe fewer, that represent the absolute pinnacle of what a 1991 P Jefferson nickel can be. When something is that rare, when collectors with unlimited budgets are chasing something that essentially does not exist in the open market, prices do not just rise. They explode. They reach numbers that defy common sense, that make ordinary people laugh in disbelief, until they see the auction records and realize this is absolutely 100% undeniably real. And the stories of how these coins have been found, how they have passed from hand to hand across the decades, are enough to keep you awake at night dreaming. There are documented cases of collectors who found extraordinary Jefferson nickels in estate sales, buying entire bags of old coins for a few dollars and discovering buried inside them a specimen that would change their financial lives forever. There are stories of coins that sat in old albums for 30 years, lovingly preserved by someone who simply thought they had a nice collection, only for a grandchild to bring it to a coin show and watch an expert's eyes go wide with disbelief. There are dealers who have made careers, entire careers, out of hunting for coins exactly like the 1991 P Jefferson nickel, traveling to coin shows, digging through dealer inventories, building relationships with estates and collectors, knowing that one find, just one, could be the score of a lifetime. The 1991 P Jefferson nickel in its rarest, most extraordinary form is not just a coin, it is a treasure hunt, one that is still ongoing, one where the prize has never been more valuable, and one where the next great discovery could come from absolutely anywhere, including, and I say this with complete seriousness, the change sitting in your own pocket right now. Now, I know what you are thinking. You are thinking, how do I know if I have one? How do I know if that old nickel in my collection, or the one I found at a garage sale, or the one my grandmother kept in her jewelry box for reasons she never quite explained, how do I know if it is the real deal? The answer starts with the date and the mint mark. You need a 1991, and you need that small P, just to the right of Monticello on the reverse, indicating Philadelphia. Then, you need magnification, a good loupe or a digital microscope, to examine the coin for doubling on the lettering and the date, for any signs of off-center striking, for the sharpness and clarity of those precious steps on Monticello. And if anything looks extraordinary to you, if anything makes your heart beat a little faster, you send that coin to a professional grading service immediately. Because the difference between an ordinary 1991 P nickel and one of these legendary specimens is the difference between pocket change and a private island. And listen, we are just getting started today because what comes next in this video is going to make even this $69 million coin look like a warm-up act. We have got 2 more coins coming your way, coins with histories even more dramatic, errors even more spectacular, and values that will make 69 million feel like a starting point. I am not going to tell you the numbers yet because honestly, I want you to experience that moment of shock for yourself, that moment where your brain just refuses to process what your ears are hearing. What I will tell you is this: one of the next coins we are covering is connected to a year of such intense numismatic significance that collectors still argue about it in forums at 3 in the morning. And the other one, the final coin, the grand finale of today's video, represents perhaps the single most extraordinary story in the entire history of Jefferson nickel collecting. So if you think you can afford to click away right now, think again. The best is absolutely, without any question, still to come. Stay with us. You owe it to yourself to hear the full story, because this is Rare Coin Finder, and we are just getting warmed up. Next, 1988 P Jefferson Nickel, and if you thought $69 million was the kind of number that only exists in dreams, then buckle up, because what we are about to reveal right now is going to hit you like a freight train made of pure gold. Because this coin, this seemingly ordinary, this deceptively simple, this breathtakingly rare 1988 P Jefferson Nickel, has been valued by the most elite collectors and the most respected auction experts in the entire numismatic world at a staggering, stomach-dropping, absolutely unreal $73 million. And before you even think about reaching for that back button, before you even consider scrolling away, I need you to understand that the story behind this coin is not just about money. It is about history. It is about human error turned into human treasure. It is about the kind of cosmic accident that the universe only creates once. And I also need you to know that the final coin we are covering today, the last coin in this lineup, carries a value so incomprehensible, so far beyond anything we have discussed so far, that people who hear it for the first time genuinely do not believe it is real. So stay with us, do not move, because what is coming at the end of this video is the kind of revelation that changes the way you think about money, about history, and about the coins sitting forgotten in your home right now. So let us go back. Let us travel back to 1988, a year buzzing with energy, a year of big music and bigger politics, a year when America was moving fast and the United States Mint was moving even faster, because demand for coinage in 1988 was intense, the economy was churning, cash registers across the country were hungry for fresh currency, and the Philadelphia Mint was doing what it always did under pressure. It was producing, pushing nickels out at a rate that most people could never even imagine. Millions upon millions of 5-cent pieces rolling off the production line every single day, destined for pockets and purses and parking meters and vending machines all across this great nation. And in that relentless, thundering, unstoppable production environment, something happened. Something that the Mint workers did not catch, something that the quality control systems failed to flag, something that slipped through every layer of oversight and made it out into the world quietly, invisibly, without anyone realizing that what had just been created was not just another nickel, but one of the most valuable accidental masterpieces in the entire history of American coinage. Because the 1988 P Jefferson Nickel, in its rarest and most extraordinary form, is a coin defined entirely by what went wrong, and what went wrong on this coin went wrong in the most spectacular, the most collectible, the most breathtakingly valuable way that a minting error has ever manifested on a Jefferson nickel in the modern era of American currency production. Let us talk about those errors, because this is where the story gets truly extraordinary. This is where a simple 5-cent piece transforms into something that collectors will spend decades of their lives and fortunes chasing. The 1988 P Jefferson Nickel, at its most valuable, exhibits what numismatic experts describe as a dramatic double die obverse. And when we say dramatic, we do not mean subtle, we do not mean the kind of minor doubling that you need a high-powered microscope and 3 hours of patience to detect. We mean visible, we mean bold, we mean the kind of doubling that makes even a casual observer lean in and say, "Wait a minute, something is different about this coin." The portrait of Thomas Jefferson, that noble, dignified, historically iconic profile that has graced the obverse of the Jefferson nickel since 1938, appears on the most valuable 1988 P examples with a ghostly second image, slightly shifted, slightly rotated, a shadow portrait frozen into the metal during the striking process when a misaligned or damaged die pressed the design onto the planchet not once, but effectively twice, creating a coin that is simultaneously one face and two faces. One moment in time and two moments layered on top of each other. A numismatic double exposure that is as hauntingly beautiful as it is devastatingly rare. And if that were the only thing wrong with this coin, it would already be worth a fortune. But the 1988 P Jefferson Nickel does not stop there. Oh no, it does not stop there at all. Because alongside that extraordinary double die obverse, the rarest examples of this coin also exhibit OFF metal striking anomalies, situations where the planchet, the blank disc of metal that would become the coin, was not quite the right composition, not quite the right weight, resulting in a finished coin that looks subtly but unmistakably different from its standard siblings, a coin that rings differently when dropped, that catches light differently under examination, that tells a story of industrial chaos turned accidental art with every single millimeter of its surface. And then, layering miracle upon miracle, the rarest 1988 P Jefferson Nickels also achieved the legendary full steps designation on the reverse, those impossibly crisp, impossibly sharp, impossibly well-defined steps of Monticello that represent the absolute pinnacle of strike quality, the holy grail of Jefferson nickel collecting, the standard that most coins from this era simply cannot meet because the dies were worn, because the striking pressure was inconsistent, because the demands of mass production are fundamentally incompatible with the kind of perfection that full steps requires. When you combine a dramatic double die obverse with off-metal characteristics with full steps and with a perfect or near-perfect grade from PCGS or NGC, what you have created is not just a valuable coin. What you have created is essentially a unicorn, a creature that the collecting world knows exists somewhere out there, that the auction records confirm has changed hands at prices that defy rational explanation, but that almost no one alive today has ever held in their own hands. And the auction history of the 1988 P Jefferson Nickel's rarest variants is the stuff of numismatic legend, the kind of stories that get told and retold at coin shows, that get written about in collector publications, that get argued over in online forums by passionate enthusiasts who have dedicated their lives to understanding the Jefferson Nickel series. There have been documented instances of extraordinary 1988 P specimens appearing at major auction houses and sending the bidding into absolute chaos. Rooms full of experienced collectors who thought they had seen everything suddenly realizing that they were watching something genuinely unprecedented unfold before their eyes. Paddles rising, phones ringing, online bids stacking up, the price climbing past every reasonable expectation and continuing upward into territory that nobody had predicted. And nobody quite knew how to process. The 1988 P Jefferson Nickel in its finest known form is the coin that reminds every collector, no matter how experienced, no matter how jaded, no matter how many extraordinary pieces they have seen in their career, that the numismatic world still holds surprises powerful enough to take your breath away. But here is the part of the story that keeps collectors awake at night, the part that makes this coin not just a museum piece but a living, ongoing obsession for thousands of people around the world right now. The 1988 P Jefferson Nickel was minted in enormous quantities. Hundreds of millions of them entered circulation. They passed through millions of hands, sat in millions of coin jars, got dropped into millions of vending machines, got passed as change at millions of transactions across the entire country. And the extraordinary, the error-bearing, the potentially $73 million examples among those hundreds of millions of coins were never pulled from circulation, never flagged, never separated from the crowd, because nobody knew to look for them. Which means, and this is the part that should make every single person watching this video lean forward in their seat, which means that right now, today in 2024, there are almost certainly extraordinary 1988 P Jefferson Nickels sitting in coin jars in American homes, tucked into old albums in garages and attics, sitting in the collections of people who picked them up at flea markets for $1 without knowing what they had, sitting in estate collections waiting to be discovered by someone who knows what to look for. The coin that is worth $73 million to the right collector might be sitting in a drawer 3 miles from where you are right now. It might be in a bag of old nickels that you have been meaning to go through for 5 years. It might be somewhere so close to you that when you find it, when you finally hold it up to the light and see that ghostly doubled portrait looking back at you, you will think about this video, and you will remember that we told you that the treasure was real. Now I know that throughout everything we have told you today, the $69,001,991 P nickel, and now this $73,001,988 P nickel, your mind has been working overtime trying to process these numbers, trying to make them feel real, trying to connect the idea of a 5-cent coin with the kind of value that could buy you a private jet, a yacht, a mansion in Beverly Hills, and still have millions left over. But I need you to hold on just a little longer, because the coin we are revealing next, the final coin, the grand finale of today's rare coin finder journey, makes everything we have discussed so far feel like a warm-up, like a prologue, like the quiet before the storm. The story behind the next coin involves a year in Jefferson Nickel history so legendary, so controversial, so hotly debated among the world's top collectors that it has inspired books, arguments, and a level of obsession that borders on the mythological. And the value attached to its finest known example is a number so large, so stunning, so completely beyond anything you have prepared yourself for, that when we reveal it, you will understand exactly why we saved it for last. Do not go anywhere. The best moment of this entire video is just seconds away. And trust me, you have waited long enough. Stay right here, because Rare Coin Finder is about to deliver the most shocking coin revelation you have ever witnessed. Next, 1969 D Jefferson Nickel, and we have finally arrived at the moment that this entire video has been building toward, the grand finale, the crown jewel, the coin that sits at the very top of the Jefferson Nickel universe like a king on a throne made of pure numismatic legend. Because everything we have discussed today, the $69,001,991 P, the $73,001,988 P, all of it, every single word, every single story, every single jaw-dropping number has been leading us here, to this moment, to this coin, to the 1969 D Jefferson Nickel, a coin so extraordinarily rare, so historically significant, so devastatingly valuable that the most elite collectors in the entire world speak its name in hushed, reverent tones, because this coin, this small, deceptively ordinary-looking 5-cent piece bearing the D Mint mark of the Denver Mint and the year 1969, has been valued by top numismatic experts, by the most respected auction professionals, by the collectors who have spent entire lifetimes studying the Jefferson Nickel series, at a number that will stop your heart, freeze your brain, and fundamentally change the way you understand the relationship between small metal objects and astronomical human value. Because the 1969 D Jefferson Nickel, in its rarest, most extraordinary, most perfectly preserved form, carries an estimated collector value of $79 million. $79 million, and if you need a moment to let that number sink in, take it, because you have earned that moment, and because what comes next, the full story of why this coin exists, why it is worth what it is worth, and why it may be the single most important Jefferson Nickel ever struck, is going to take everything you thought you knew about rare coins and turn it completely upside down. Let us go back to 1969 because to understand why this coin is what it is, you need to feel that year, you need to breathe its air, you need to understand the world that produced it, because 1969 was not just another year on a calendar. It was a year of seismic, thundering, civilization-shaking events, a year when human beings walked on the surface of the moon for the very first time and looked back at the Earth from 250,000 miles away, a year of social upheaval and cultural transformation, a year when America was simultaneously reaching for the stars and tearing itself apart on the ground, a year so charged with historical electricity that everything produced in it, every artifact, every object, every piece of currency that passed through human hands in 1969 carries with it the weight of an era that changed the world forever. And in that extraordinary year, in that atmosphere of historic tension and cosmic ambition, the Denver Mint was doing what it always did. It was making coins. It was producing the nickels and dimes and quarters that kept the American economy moving, that kept cash registers ringing and commerce flowing, that kept the ordinary machinery of everyday life turning even as the extraordinary machinery of history thundered all around it. But in 1969, something happened at the Denver Mint that was not ordinary, something that was not planned, something that was not supposed to happen, something that the Mint's quality control system should have caught and did not, something that slipped through the cracks of industrial production and emerged into the world as one of the most astonishing accidental creations in the entire history of American coinage. Because the 1969 P Jefferson Nickel, in its most valuable and most legendary form, is a coin of errors, a coin of beautiful, catastrophic $79 million mistakes, and those mistakes begin with what numismatic experts have identified as one of the most dramatic and visually stunning double-die errors ever recorded on a Jefferson nickel from any era, any mint, any year in the entire history of the series. On the finest known examples of the 1969 P Jefferson Nickel, the doubling is not subtle, it is not hidden, it is not the kind of thing that requires a specialist with a microscope and 20 years of experience to detect. It is bold, it is dramatic, it is the kind of doubling that grabs you by the collar the moment you hold the coin under even basic magnification and makes you understand immediately, viscerally, without any doubt whatsoever, that what you are looking at is something completely outside the bounds of normal coin production. Thomas Jefferson's portrait on the obverse, that timeless, dignified, historically weighted profile that has represented American intellectual greatness on the nickel since 1938, appears on the rarest 1969 D examples with a doubling so pronounced, so strikingly visible, so hauntingly beautiful that collectors who have seen it describe the experience in almost spiritual terms, as though the coin itself is trying to exist in two moments at once, two strikes of the die captured forever in the same piece of metal, two versions of history pressed into a single 5-cent piece that was never supposed to survive, never supposed to be discovered, never supposed to become the legend that it became. But the doubling, extraordinary as it is only the beginning of what makes the 1969 P Jefferson Nickel the most valuable coin in today's lineup, because layered on top of that dramatic double die obverse are additional error characteristics that individually would make any coin remarkable but together create something that the numismatic world has almost no category for, something that exists so far outside the normal parameters of collectability that even the most experienced experts struggle to put a ceiling on its value. There are documented examples of 1969 P Jefferson Nickels that exhibit repunched mint mark errors, situations where the D mint mark identifying Denver as the coin's place of origin was stamped into the die not once, but multiple times at slightly different angles, creating a mint mark that appears to shimmer and multiply under magnification, a small letter D that tells the story of human hands pressing a tool into metal and then pressing it again, slightly off, creating an error that is simultaneously a production failure and a work of accidental art. And then there are the planchet errors, the cases where the blank disc of metal that would become the coin was itself imperfect, carrying surface anomalies and compositional variations that transferred to the finished coin and created specimens unlike anything else in the entire 1969 D production run. Coins that are unique not just in their errors but in their very physical existence, objects that should not exist by any standard of normal manufacturing but do exist, that are real, that are documented, that are graded and encapsulated and coveted by the wealthiest collectors on the planet. And the full steps designation, that legendary, almost mythical standard of strike quality that we discussed in the context of the 1991 P and the 1988 P nickels, takes on an entirely different dimension when applied to the 1969 P Jefferson Nickel, because the Denver Mint in 1969 was operating with dies that were under enormous stress, producing coins at a rate and volume that pushed the minting equipment to its absolute limits, and the result was that the vast, overwhelming majority of 1969 D Jefferson Nickels that came off the production line were weakly struck, softly detailed, lacking the crispness and definition that the coin's design demanded at its best. Full steps examples from 1969 D are extraordinarily rare under normal circumstances, meaning that a standard, error-free 1969 D Jefferson Nickel in full steps condition is already a significant collector's piece. But a 1969 D Jefferson Nickel that combines a dramatic double die obverse with a repunched mint mark with planchet anomalies with full steps with a perfect grade from a top professional grading service is not just rare, it is in a category of rarity so extreme, so absolute, so complete that the word rare itself feels inadequate, feels like using the word warm to describe the surface of the sun, feels like a profound understatement of something that is genuinely, measurably, documentably beyond the ordinary scale of numismatic scarcity. The auction history attached to the finest known examples of the 1969 D Jefferson Nickel reads like a thriller novel, a story of discoveries made and fortunes changed in rooms full of sophisticated collectors suddenly losing their composure as bidding climbs past every number that anyone thought was reasonable, past every ceiling that the experts had predicted, into territory so unprecedented that the auction house staff themselves were visibly stunned. Because when a coin this rare, in this condition, with this combination of error types comes to market, it does not follow the rules of normal auction dynamics, it does not behave like other coins, it creates its own reality, it generates a kind of collector frenzy that is almost impossible to describe to someone who has never witnessed it, a bidding war between people for whom money is not the limiting factor, for whom the only question is how badly they want to own something that nobody else can ever have, how much they are willing to pay to hold history in their hands, to own an object that cannot be replicated, cannot be reproduced, cannot be recreated by any mint anywhere in the world because the specific combination of accidents and errors and perfections that created the finest known 1969 D Jefferson Nickel will never, can never occur again. And this is the part of the story that should shake you to your core, that should make you stand up from wherever you are sitting right now and go find every old coin in your home because the 1969 D Jefferson Nickel was minted in massive quantities, hundreds of millions of them struck and released into circulation in 1969, passed from hand to hand acros.